What's up, everybody? The Fed Reserve decided not to raise interest rates last week after 10 consecutive rate hikes over the past year. Does this mean that interest rates will finally start to come down? Is the correction over? And if rates come down, does this mean that home prices will start to go up again? Will this cause sellers to finally put their homes on the market, creating more inventory? I have so many questions, as I'm sure you do, so let's take a look at the latest housing market headlines to see what the experts are saying. Let's dive right in. Claire Trapasso of Realtor.com wrote an article titled, "The Fed Just Gave the Housing Market a Break. Mortgage Rates Are Poised to Fall by This Much," where she quotes the chief economist of Realtor.com, Daniel Hale, as saying, "Mortgage rates have likely peaked, but we're not going to see a sudden or sharp decline. It's going to be gradual. By year's end, mortgage rates could drop nationally to the low 6% range as long as inflation continues to slow," predicts Hale. She expects they will eventually head back down to around 5% over the next few years. Mortgage rates averaged 6.71% for 30-year fixed-rate loans in the week ending June 8th, according to Freddie Mac. They averaged 6.95% as of last Wednesday, according to Mortgage News Daily. This is double what rates were back in 2020 and 2021. Fed Chair Jerome Powell commented on the housing market during his press conference, saying that he thinks that the housing market is bottoming and may already be improving. Activity in the housing sector remains weak, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said during a Wednesday press conference. Certainly, the housing is very interest rate sensitive, and it's the first place really that's either helped by lower rates or is held back by higher rates. And we certainly saw that over the course of the last year. We now see housing putting in a bottom and maybe moving up a little bit. We're watching that situation carefully. However, the Fed indicated it will most likely raise rates next month if inflation doesn't fall further and the economy continues on its hot streak. And another hike could also happen this year. If the Fed does hike rates again this year, Hale thinks that rates will still stay under 6.5%, but just won't get as close to 6%. Considering the balance sheet difficulties faced by the community banks and weakness in the commercial real estate sector, the Fed should look at cutting interest rates before the end of the year, Yun said. It all depends on what happens with inflation in the near future. We've still got a ways to go, but we've made some substantial progress in inflation, says Hale. And as far as home prices go, sale prices have been dropping for existing homes, which excludes new construction, since February, according to the National Association of Realtors. And now asking prices are catching up. So does Hale believe prices will go down if rates go up again? There will be some relief, but the number of homes for sale is still pretty limited, so we don't expect to see big price declines. In an article in Forbes titled, "Housing Market Predictions for 2023, When Will Home Prices Be Affordable Again?" Robin Rothstein writes that the low inventory of housing will sustain higher home prices. Inventory is approximately 46% below the historical average dating back to 1999, says Jack McDowell, Chief Investment Officer and co-founder at Palisades Group. At the current sales pace, unsold inventory of existing homes is at a 2.9 month supply, according to NAR. This is up from 2.2 months a year ago and 2.6 months in March, but is still considered historically low, especially in the face of pent-up demand, with reportedly 85% of homeowners sitting on a mortgage rate below 6%. Industry experts are not optimistic about when inventory will eventually normalize. We think that it is highly unlikely that the inventory problem will be resolved in 2023, says McDowell. With still low inventory, the likelihood of a housing market crash is minimal. Home prices have been increasing the last 2 months after 7 consecutive months of decreases. Rothstein writes that experts consider this latest trend indicator that home price declines are a thing of the past. 2 months of increasing prices do not a definitive recovery make, but March's results suggest that the decline in home prices that began in June of 2022 may have come to an end, said Craig J. Lazara, managing director at S&P DJI in the report. That said, the challenges posed by the current mortgage rates and the continuing possibility of economic weakness are likely to remain a headwind for housing prices for at least the next several months. And in Zillow's latest home value and sales forecast for June of 2023, they are calling for home values to grow 5% in 2023. They also cite low inventory as the reason that home prices are continuing to push upward. That's an upward revision from last month's forecast, which called for a 3.9% growth in 2023. They're predicting 4.2 million existing home sales in 2023, a 17% decline from 2022. This is down slightly from last month's projection of 4.4 million. They believe that buyer demand will go even higher if rates go down, but low inventory and higher prices will likely offset these impacts, limiting the potential for sales. And finally, in Redfin's latest housing market forecast, they report that the total number of U.S. homes for sale dropped 6% from a year earlier during the 4 weeks ending June 11, the biggest decline in 13 months. New listings dropped 23%, continuing a 10-month streak of double-digit declines. There are 39% fewer homes for sale now than there were 5 years ago in June of 2018. Pending home sales are down 17% year over year, the biggest decline in over 4 months. But it isn't all due to a lack of demand. Buyers want to buy right now, even with the higher interest rates. They just need more houses on the market to choose from. With demand outpacing supply, home prices will not fall dramatically. They also do not believe that mortgage rates will go down over the next few months, even with the Fed pausing rate hikes this month, because Powell has said that he will most likely raise rates again by the end of the year. The Fed's indication that there are more rate hikes to come is not what home buyers want to hear. It's likely to keep mortgage rates elevated and may even push them up a bit, said Redfin economics research lead Chen Zhao. People who are sitting on the sidelines waiting for mortgage rates to decline should know that's unlikely to happen in the foreseeable future. If a home that's in your price range and has everything on your wish list hits the market, there is no good reason to wait. So what's the bottom line? Even with the pause on rate hikes, unless inflation continues to slow down, mortgage rates won't necessarily come down enough to cause sellers with a 3% or lower mortgage interest rate to put their homes on the market and then go buy something with a much higher rate. Therefore, inventory will stay low while demand is still high, causing home prices to stay elevated. I know this is not what you want to hear, but like I always say, real estate is very localized. So what's happening in one part of the country may not be what's happening where you live. But in general, and more specifically where I am in the DC area, low inventory is preventing home prices from dropping. Are they down from their all-time high during the pandemic boom? Yes, for the most part. And in my experience, if sellers price their homes where the last highest comp sold, that house will sit on the market until the price gets reduced enough for buyers to see the value. Yet, if sellers do price their homes at a reasonable price where buyers can see the value, that house will most likely get bid up by multiple offers. It's a mixed, weird market that's not great for buyers and definitely exacerbates the affordability crisis. But it will only get better, in my opinion, with more inventory. But what are you guys seeing where you live? Are you seeing a lot of inventory? Are you seeing price reductions? Or are you seeing multiple offers like I am with prices going way above asking? Definitely comment below. Tell us where you live. Tell us what you're seeing. It is the best way for all of us to know what's really happening in our housing markets. Hope you got some value out of today's video. If you did and you want to show our channel some support, definitely smash that like button, comment below, and subscribe to our channel. It just motivates us to make more videos. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Bye.